England has given us quite a wide range of beer styles. From bitters on the lighter color to darker porters, they've done it all. But the thing that makes them most famous today is not the style of beer, but the way in which they produce and serve it. That is, cask condition or bottle conditioned ale. What this means is the beer is not filtered, all the live yeast is not taken out of it. It is allowed to grow and mature from the time it leaves the brewery until the time you drink it in the pub. Problem is, many of the large brewers and even some of the mid-sized regional brewers have been going away from cask conditioning. What that leaves it for are the smaller new generation of micro-brewers to take on this torch and keep the flame of cask condition and bottle conditioned beer alive. Today on Beer Trek, we're going to go to one such brewery, the Swale Brewery, owned by former homebrewer John Davidson in the city of Sittingbourne in the province of Kent in the United Kingdom. Let's go on in.
Kent, England has changed greatly in the last 100 years. But the English pub has changed little. Quaffing pints of real cask ale from Kent's new traditional brewery since 1995, Swale Brewing.
I was born in Kent and did home brewing for about 26 years on and off. We make all traditional real ales. Cask condition ales, bottle condition ales. We make porters, pale ales, stouts, milds, bitters. Just generally traditional English style beers. We're expanding the brewery, hopefully in the next month to 2 months, and maybe this year we'll start to look at getting a pub.
My name's Tony Prince, and I'm the brewer here.
And you don't sound like you're from the United Kingdom. Where are you from?
No, I'm from New Zealand, yeah.
And what brought you to the UK?
Well, various things. I just came over to travel basically and ended up staying, so been here about 7 years now.
So how'd you get into brewing?
Well, I've been a home brewer since I was about 16, and always wanted to become a brewer at some stage, and I came over here and tried out at a few breweries, got some experience, and then started working with John. Well, we make quite a few different ales. They're all cask conditioned ales or bottle conditioned ales, so they're all living ales. One of our most popular ones, as you well know, is Indian Summer Pale Ale. Does very well in America. We do a really nice winter warmer, which is called Cocker Warmer. That's gone throughout the country over the Christmas period. Our main sort of bread and butter beer is Kentish Pride. That's just a 3.8% bitter, which has been dry hopped with East Kent Goldings plugs. We do lots of various one-off brews. We're doing a brew called Climax at the moment, which will be featuring in the Dover Real Ale Festival. Well, it's actually the Winter Ale Festival, and that's a 6.9% pretty hoppy brew. Most of the brews that we use, most of the brews that we do, use quite a lot of hops. That's our trademark, though, isn't it?
Well, we are in Kent,
Yeah.
the land of hops.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
are these all John's recipes? Are any of them yours?
Most of them are John's recipes. I do a bit of tweaking now and again, or he'll say, do an ale at 4.2% copper coloured with certain hop characteristics, and I'll just whack it up for him. So it's a bit of a joint effort, really.
So once
But most of all the brews that you know, like he started with are is totally his own. Basically, we come in. We have hot liquors that we use for brewing water. We have that heated already, so we come in, get our malt, take it to the mill, get that all set up. And then what we need to do is get the right strike heat for our hot liquor. So that means it's going to interact with the malt once we crush it, take it up through an auger. We're going to spray hot liquor onto the crushed malt and at a certain temperature, so it hits the mash tun at another temperature. So what we aim to do is get the grist into the mash tun and mash at 65 degrees. So basically what that is, it's like a porridge that sits there for an hour or an hour and a half, depending on the recipe, at 65 degrees. Sometimes we mash in, for certain recipes, at 63, depends. It's normally between 63 and 65. After that period has elapsed, what happens is all the starches and the enzymes react with the starches in the mash tun on the crushed malt, and they create that starch into sugar. It's a process of saccharification. So what we have after that is a liquid we call wort, and that is what we need to brew from. So after that period has elapsed, we start running off the wort from the mash tun. We transfer that into what's known as an underback, and it has a type of filter in it, so that cleans the wort, makes it a lot clearer. We also recirculate before we start running off to make sure the wort is clear. Transfer it through a pump into the copper. While we're doing that, the level is going down, so we need to rinse out the residual sugars that are left in the mash tun, and that's what we do with a sparge arm, and that's called sparging. So we rinse the grains at around 77 degrees up towards 80, 81 degrees throughout the sparging process, and then towards the end of the sparging, that temperature will drop down to about 77, 76 degrees. So that process takes about another hour and a half, so that goes into the copper. Once it's in the copper, we add our hops for our bitterness, and then we heat that wort, and it takes about another 2 hours to come to the boil, and then we boil that wort with our hops. During the boil, we can time different stages to add different hops with different aromas, different flavours, different bitterness, and that depends entirely on the recipe. So when it comes to the boil, we boil that for an hour. Some breweries boil for an hour and a half, some brew for 2, but we tend to boil for an hour. We add hops, say, in the last 15 minutes. That gives a bit of flavour. And then right at the end of the boil, we add copper findings, or some people refer to it as Irish moss. It's a carrageen, an alginate. So what that does is help precipitate the proteins in the boil. Then we turn off the copper and add some late hops to give aroma. After that, let the wort settle. We let it settle for 20 minutes, so all the proteins tend to precipitate, and the hops fall to the bottom of the hop filter and act as a filter for the trub. After that 20 minutes has elapsed, we then transfer that wort back into the underback, through a heat exchanger and up into a fermenter. So that's so that the wort will reach the fermenter at the correct temperature that we can pitch our yeast at. Ideally, we like to transfer into the fermenters at around 23 degrees, depending though on the time of year, because obviously in winter time the fermenters are a lot cooler, so we have to transfer at a higher rate. But ideally, when we need to pitch the yeast, it'll be at 23 degrees. So that process takes around another hour and a quarter. That's the transfer from the copper up into the fermenters. The type of yeast we use is a dry yeast. It's called Not in the Mail. It's a yeast that we like to use. We know how to use it. It works with us very well. We know what results we can get from it. And it's also a good yeast to use in bottle conditioning. So we pitch that yeast, and then what happens is that the yeast reacts with the sugars in the wort to create alcohol and CO2. And so we ferment for about 3 to 4 days. So that wort then becomes beer. After 3 to 4 days has elapsed, once the gravity has gone down to the level that we required at, we then chill that beer. And what happens then is that it causes the fermentation to stop, and it drops the yeast out of the solution, so it all goes to the bottom. We then leave that for about a day to 2 days, and then we then rack that off into casks. When we rack into the casks, what that means is taking the beer from the fermenters, putting it into 9-gallon or 9-gallon firkins, 18-gallon kildekins. We also add findings, which is called isinglass findings. That's made from the swim bladder from a sturgeon. It sounds pretty gross, but it basically drops what yeast is left in the beer, drops that in the cask. So you could therefore roll out your cask into a pub, tap and spile it, and it should be clear in about 5 to 6 hours. And then we drink it.
Then we
Oh,
take
you
over
drink it.
and we drink it, yes.
From the mill to the kettle to the cask to the pub and to the glass. All traditional ingredients, brewed using traditional methods, producing a traditional pub ale. Swale Brewing, Kent's newest old brewery.
Drinking a near perfect pint of copper oast. Oast for the oast houses that used to be used to dry hops. Wonderful English hop aroma. That ever-present bitterness from the Swale Brewing Company. It's all about hops here, brewery fresh, I think I'll have another.